Watermark water cooler. Today we have Brooke with us, and we're going to talk a little bit of the website discovery phase before development begins. Brooke, if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself to our audience.
I'm Brooke. I work at Watermark. I worked there for a little under a year as a graphic designer.
Awesome. Um, it's been awesome to be working with Brooke and the team as we continue to change our web process and how we build better websites. And part of that is this conversation about, how do we build websites better? A lot of times we have this mentality of, we're going to build it and they will come methodology for, people think that that's going to happen. They build the site and all these people are just going to come and buy our product or our service. And unfortunately, there's so much noise in the web right now that you have to do it right and better. And a big part of that is, this upfront conversation and how you do that. So Brooke, that's the first question I'm going to ask you is like, what is some of that before coding work that we do to build a better website?
So there is a lot that goes in before the coding. At Watermark, we actually have 5 steps that we do before any of the coding exists, and a major part of that heavy lifting starts in those steps. We start with objective, which is when we find out what the user wants, what the client wants, what they want to see in this new website. Then we start with the discovery, which is a lot of the user testing and a lot of the analytics, a lot of Google Analytics touches from the website that exists now, kind of seeing how users interact with it, what works, what doesn't work, and then how users get confused or what they think the website does, stuff like that really comes from that discovery step. It's a huge part in creating a website that works really well. We also have after that, we have the devise step, the design step, and then the distill step. I think that, in my opinion, the discovery step is the most important, just because of that user testing. Analyzing the website now and what works and what doesn't is huge. When it's done correctly, that research can provide amazing amounts of insight into what works for today's users. And that's the most important part of having a website, is making sure that the users come, they understand it, and they stay. That's the biggest part, because 88% of users are less likely to return to a website after a bad user experience, and especially after their competitors are just a click away and they're never going to come back. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think this is all super interesting stuff. And obviously some of what you're talking about is like, how do we get rid of friction, right? Like that's what makes people leave sites if they don't get what they want when they are trying to get to something or trying to buy something. And so doing all those steps that you were mentioning are like a huge part of a better user experience, as you're saying, less friction, reducing the friction to allow somebody to get what they want when they want it. And unfortunately, we live in a society, right, that's just like, give it to me now. If I don't have it this second, I'm gone. Like, see ya. I don't want to stay on your website anymore.
Yeah. Today's users are so impatient. I definitely am as a user. If a web page doesn't load quick enough, I'm out. I'm done. I'm not coming back. And that's just how we've been trained to. So it's on us as designers and UI UX designers and marketers to make sure that that never happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times, a lot of people build sites and they don't think anything about those steps before this. They're just straight to, let's start designing a website. And it is so much more than that. To build a really good site, you have to build the personas. You have to have gone back and looked at analytics and said, oh, we realized from analytics, from if have an existing old site, we realized we want, your objective was for them to make a sale, schedule an appointment, whatever that CTA may be. We find out from analytics that, oh, they were actually going to XYZ, and then they were getting stuck and they weren't moving beyond that to what what your KPI is, or what your what you're looking for them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And by building and doing some of these steps prior to designing, we've answered some of those questions so that
Yeah.
we're not just repeating the same mistake over again.
I feel like if
So
we designed a website based on what we think is cool, and we don't take into consideration what the user wants, it's gonna be dead in the water when it gets
yeah.
released. It's that testing, constantly testing on all platforms is so necessary, because again, it is a living, breathing thing that you're constantly revising and you're constantly changing, because that's what the user is doing. The user is constantly changing. So to stay relevant and to make sure that your website is providing the service that it needs to provide for the user, you have to test it constantly, whether that's A/B testing, testing the analytics, user testing. It can be anything. And
Uh,
that's another thing, is it doesn't look the same for every single website either. So
Something new that we started doing was using an infinity map. Can you, what is that?
yeah, so we do use that affinity map. It basically takes all of the information that is on a website and creates these, well, we call it buckets. So buckets of information. We categorize it and take what already exists and then categorize them to make sure that the user understands it correctly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Also, like I said, something new that we've started adding into our process as of recently. Cool step to help understand what the user wants.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
We also use that empathy map too, which comes in handy with that user research. When you do the user research, you get the research back, and you can categorize how they're thinking, how they're feeling, how they're acting, um, and it gives you almost a better idea of how that website works, which is nice, and what the user wants and what the user needs as well.
awesome. We do all that stuff up front
Mhm.
before we even get to site mapping and wireframing, which is also another huge part of our process, as you mentioned, that helps us build a better site. What are those steps look like?
Yeah, so a sitemap is basically the next step in the affinity. The sitemap is the backbone of the structure of the website. It shows where everything lives in those. So if you think about the main nav that's on any website ever, those are the categories, and then from there you create little blocks almost that show you different topics that they want. So that would be the sitemap. And then from the sitemap, you're able to create the wireframe, which is less about design and more about structure based on what we know from the research, what the user wants to see. That structure and then you go to the design, but that structure from the wireframe is so important because it shows exactly where everything needs to be based on how people interact with a website.
Yeah, you can think of the wireframe as kind of like the blueprint of the website. It's if you're building a house, you want to have a good blueprint, so you're not knocking down walls before you even get to finishing stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
um, both are super key pieces of the web build process.
Yeah.
How do you feel about different size websites? Does every website need to go through some of these steps or all of these steps?
No, actually, every website is different. There's no website that's the same. So some of these steps, especially the discovery step, I mean, maybe an affinity map won't work. Maybe website is too small for an affinity map to make sense. So in that instance, you wouldn't do an affinity map, but you would probably go straight to the sitemap. Or you do, if the website's huge, if it's research based, you spend a lot of time in the research section. You basically spend a lot of time in every section that you possibly can just to make sure that it runs fluidly. But
Yeah.
no process is the same for any website.
Yeah. I mean, so some of the like, I think it's really important. I don't care if it's a one pager or 500 page website, thousands of page website. Uh, Doing some upfront work is going to save you tons of headache in the in the future, instead of you having to go back and say, we did this completely wrong and we had no idea what our user was actually wanting.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's not good. Like you're gonna have a bad user experience.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think it's really important that we take this, that you take the steps to really think about how you're building your site before you just hand it off to a developer and say, like, build me a website. Like
Exactly.
that's probably not going to be the best user experience, and you're probably not going to have a successful web launch.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, take a simple landing page, for instance. We've learned that the simpler the better. Landing pages need
Mm,
to show the user exactly what they want immediately when they open that landing
mm,
page. Almost like a less is more, like big bold header, an image of what it is, and that is what works the best. And in a simple landing page to a huge research website, that is almost like the structure that you need to base all of your everything off of. But it's just so important. Just like even something as simple as a landing page is
yeah,
could fail.
awesome. As you've done a lot of these, Brooke, what if you were to give somebody a takeaway, um, what would you give them?
Invest in research. It's
Mm,
so important. I mean, some of the biggest companies in the world base a lot of their success off of user research and A/B
mm,
testing and stuff like that. I mean, there's Mint, there's Airbnb, there's Lyft. They've all done research, and
yeah,
those websites stand the test of time. They're constantly changing because of
yeah,
that research.
yeah. I mean, I think to add to that is, I think we get a lot of times where people go, well, I don't want to spend the money on the site. And it's like, well, uh, you do get a little bit what you pay for. And if you don't do the research and do this upfront work, um, you're going to get an inferior website. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll add to Brooks, do the research. Would also, I would say, you know, be prepared to set yourself up for success, and have a little bit of budget to do some research before expectations are, I just want a website right now. So um, I like that takeaway there. I think that's all we got for right now. I mean, this could go on for a much longer conversation. If you have other questions about, the pre development stage, we'd love to have a conversation with you. If there's other topics that you'd love for us to talk about inside of marketing, web development, whatever it may be, please leave a comment down below. Um, we're always trying to develop better content for our users. So the more you tell us, the better content we can make. And we have a full team of experts to help answer those questions, and we can get them on and do a vlog for you all about that topic. Thanks again for watching. We will have another episode next month. And from the water cooler, signing out. Thanks, Brooke, for helping us out and answering some questions. and we'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye.